In Richardson, Texas, there's a nonprofit organization called Parkinson Voice Project, dedicated to teaching people with Parkinson's how to speak and live with intent. Intent means to be focused, purposeful, and deliberate, and to take back control over one's destiny, which was previously thought impossible with a diagnosis of Parkinson's. Let's start with the basics. Parkinson's disease was first medically described in 1817 by an English physician named James Parkinson. He wrote a manuscript entitled An Essay on the Shaking Palsy, where he described similar symptoms of 6 different people. In the essay, Dr. Parkinson wrote, "So slight are the first inroads of this malady, and so extremely slow is its progress, that it rarely happens that the patient can form any recollection of the precise period of its commencement. It can be difficult for those with Parkinson's to pinpoint when their first symptoms appeared, since the condition progresses so gradually. Some of the early symptoms might include tremor, slowness of movement, impaired balance, rigidity, and reduced writing size." About 55 years after Dr. Parkinson wrote his manuscript, Dr. Jean-Martin Charcot, a French neurologist, suggested that the name of the condition be changed from shaking palsy to Parkinson's disease. He thought that Dr. Parkinson should be recognized for his earlier work, and Charcot was adamant that not all patients had tremors, and that weakness was not a typical symptom of the condition. If you know someone with Parkinson's, you may be surprised by Dr. Charcot's observations about weakness. Let us explain. Parkinson's is characterized by smaller movements, smaller walking, smaller writing, and a smaller voice. Parkinson's does not make muscles weak like other neurological disorders might. Since the movements are smaller, the muscles are not being fully used and can, therefore, become weak. The old adage, use it or lose it, applies to Parkinson's. When patients first go to their neurologist, a blood test, CT scan, MRI, or other test might be ordered. These procedures do not diagnose Parkinson's. They help rule out other disorders that may mimic Parkinson's. A diagnosis of Parkinson's is usually made through clinical observations, a thorough case history, and a neurological exam. When patients present with 2 out of the 4 cardinal symptoms, a diagnosis of Parkinson's may be suspected. A favorable response to Parkinson's medication is also valuable in terms of diagnosis. However, there could be other causes of the presenting symptoms, so it's important to be evaluated by a neurologist who is trained to distinguish these clinical differences, namely, a movement disorder specialist. The exact origin of Parkinson's is unknown, although scientists suspect that genetic and environmental factors, as well as exposure to chemicals and pesticides, could be possible contributors. Parkinson's affects 1 in 100 adults over the age of 60. When someone is diagnosed with Parkinson's before the age of 50, the condition is referred to as Young Onset Parkinson's Disease, or YOPD. Parkinson's is not contagious, and although there is no cure, there is minimal impact on lifespan. April is known as Parkinson's Awareness Month, and the tulip is the international symbol. Parkinson's disease develops when cells in the brain that produce a chemical called dopamine die or become impaired. By the time someone has any symptoms of Parkinson's, as much as 80% of the dopamine in the brain could be depleted. To understand the role of dopamine, let's briefly explain neurons and neurotransmitters. There are billions of neurons in the brain. Neurons receive information from other neurons, process that information, and then send the information to other neurons. In this diagram, you'll notice that there is a gap between the 2 neurons, which is normal for all humans. This gap prevents information from being passed from one neuron to the next. It's like a short in an electrical circuit. This is where dopamine comes into play. Dopamine is released into the gap and helps transmit information from one neuron to the next. This is why dopamine is called a neurotransmitter. Dopamine specifically helps transmit impulses that control automatic movements. Since people with Parkinson's don't have enough dopamine, it becomes difficult to produce automatic movements. such as walking, talking, and writing. However, there is some good news. People with Parkinson's can control some of their movements with one simple concept: intent. You see, humans have two basic motor systems that control movement: the extrapyramidal system and the pyramidal system. The extrapyramidal system is responsible for movements we perform automatically without conscious effort, such as blinking, swallowing, and swinging our arms when we walk. The pyramidal system, on the other hand, is responsible for intentional movements, purposeful movements, such as putting on makeup, shaving, or learning to play the piano. Here are some simplified drawings of the brain that show the differences between the two motor systems. Impulses travel from the cortex down to the brainstem and spinal cord. Both motor systems end in the same place, but it's how they reach their final destination that makes them different. In the extrapyramidal system, there's a complex network of neural fibers that stop at various structures within the brain, including the substantia nigra, where dopamine is produced. Think of the extrapyramidal system as a country road that has extra stops along its path. Without enough dopamine, the extrapyramidal system doesn't work very well. This is why automatic movements are disrupted in Parkinson's. But in the pyramidal system, the neural fibers travel straight down without stopping. Think of the pyramidal system as an expressway. Since the neural fibers don't stop to communicate with other structures, this motor system works better for people with Parkinson's. Intentional and deliberate movements are preserved. We activate the pyramidal system when we consciously and purposefully produce a movement. When people with Parkinson's use intent, their speech sounds clearer, they stand up straighter, and their handwriting becomes more legible. All of us have used intent throughout our lives. Think about a past job interview. Did you make a conscious effort to smile and make good eye contact? Did you purposefully stand up straight and speak clearly? You were using intent. Have you ever been driving when suddenly you get caught in a downpour? Did you turn off the radio and put both hands on the wheel? You were using intent. What about when you exercise? Do you work hard to swing your arms, lift your knees higher? Do sit-ups or push-ups with more effort? This is intent. At Parkinson Voice Project, we encourage people with Parkinson's to speak with intent. Say it like you mean it. Speak with gusto. And speak like you're the CEO of a company. When we speak with intent, our speech sounds louder, clearer, and more expressive. And once we learn how to speak with intent, we can start applying this concept to other movements like walking, writing, and living. Up to 89% of people with Parkinson's can struggle with speech production, since speaking is an automatic behavior and the automatic system isn't working well. The early signs of a speech disorder can include a softer voice, a voice that sounds hoarse or scratchy, frequent throat clearing, trailing off at the end of sentences, and inconsistent production of the voice. Some days the voice sounds normal, and other days it doesn't. Parkinson Voice Project has developed a two-part therapy approach that helps those with Parkinson's regain and maintain their speaking abilities. Speak Out, followed by the Loud Crowd. Speak Out consists of 25 lessons laid out in a specialized workbook that includes speech, voice, and cognitive exercises. Speak Out workbooks are provided as a gift from Parkinson Voice Project to any person with Parkinson's in the United States who is being treated by a Speak Out trained speech-language pathologist. Parkinson Voice Project appreciates donations to continue providing these workbooks at no cost. Here's an example of someone who completed Speak Out.
Have you noticed a change in your voice or speech?
Yes, I have.
What have you noticed?
It's much softer and more difficult to speak. I speak louder, clearer, and with intent.
Here's another example of progress that can be achieved through Speak Out.
Have you noticed a change in your voice or speech?
Yes.
What have you noticed?
Well, often when I'm fatigued, I can hardly talk loud. So I'm louder, I'm more confident, I speak with purpose, and I'm conscious of what I'm saying.
Many of the muscles we use for speaking are also used for swallowing. So speech therapy isn't just about improving one's communication skills.
Well, the voice is getting weaker, but my big problem is swallowing. I had a couple of episodes that were near death, actually. The one I remember specifically is my wife was out of town, and I was having sandwich at the lunch table there at our house, and took a piece of sandwich and it didn't go down. And so it stopped, and I stopped, couldn't breathe. And I can remember thinking, I said, what a ridiculous way to die, choking on a tuna fish sandwich. Well, I can tell you that before the program, I would notice stuff would get a little stuck, and it would eventually go down, but there was a problem with actually carrying through the swallowing motion. And after the program, I just swallow like a normal person. I don't even think about it anymore. Of course, I'm fairly religious about doing my exercises.
Something interesting about speech therapy for people with Parkinson's is that the goal in treatment is very different from traditional speech therapy. For example, when treating a child, the goal is to make speech production automatic. When a child finishes speech therapy, he won't have to think about articulating the syllables anymore. However, since the automatic system isn't working well for those with Parkinson's, the act of speaking will never become automatic. People with Parkinson's will need to exercise their voices every day and will always have to be intentional about speaking. This is where the second part of Parkinson Voice Project's therapy program comes in, the Loud Crowd. The Loud Crowd is a maintenance program that consists of daily exercises, weekly speech groups, and regular follow-ups every 3 to 6 months. Some people might be reluctant to attend group therapy at first. However, these groups provide support, encouragement, and valuable education to both patients and their families, in addition to ongoing instruction by a speak-out-trained speech-language pathologist. At Parkinson Voice Project, the Loud Crowd also includes a singing program. Before we conclude, there is one more aspect of Parkinson's we want to mention. Besides its impact on automatic movements, dopamine can also affect one's motivational drive to get things done. So even though people with Parkinson's have the ability to get stronger, they may not be motivated to exercise daily and attend the necessary therapy sessions. This can be confusing and even frustrating for spouses and family members. They may even mistake the patient's apparent apathy as laziness or pure stubbornness. People with Parkinson's and their family members need to actively address challenges with motivation and find ways to exercise daily. Maintaining the ability to speak and to swallow depends on this. Friends and family need not feel sorry for the person with Parkinson's. Instead, provide assistance and encouragement by setting goals, establishing routines, and even exercising together. Thank you for taking time to watch this information session. Parkinson Voice Project's vision is that Speak Out and the Loud Crowd will be replicated all over the world so that people with Parkinson's everywhere will learn the benefits of speaking and living with intent. Parkinson Voice Project would like to send you a copy of the Loud Crowd step-by-step plan for living with intent. This document helps organize the steps necessary to manage Parkinson's. To receive your free digital copy of our step-by-step plan and to receive regular updates and more helpful information about living with Parkinson's, click on the following link.